What's good, my fellow peasants? How are you all doing? As the title suggests, bringing a video here about how the FF7 remake is going to tackle the issue going into the episodes. We know that it's going to be episodic now, and it's got me thinking, I talked about this in my last video, how our combat stats, level, gears and character setups is going to transition across the remake episodes. Now, so this is about how we're going to transition between games, not about when. One of you subscribers, you asked me to do a video about when I realistically see them breaking the game up and sort of the more finer details around that. That video is coming, I will do it, but onto this video. Now this video, I said in my last Just Press X video that rantaroni. I did say I would do this, and for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's kind of relevant. Because in that video I talk about how difficult and tedious a balance Final Fantasy's combat system has always been. How incredibly easy it is to get too powerful, especially when you do optional content. Do too much optional content and you'll likely end up one hitting the end boss and sort of getting to a point where you're over leveled. And it's not just doing optional content, I mean it's anything to sticking to a specific team of players, generally just derping around. Go back to the last video and you'll see that, and I see it as a problem. I see it as a problem, guys. I see it as a huge problem that not just Final Fantasy has, but many video game franchises, because they tend to have these mainline stories, or no, they do have these mainline stories that cater solely to casual players. The difficulty and scaling of most bosses is calculated on an average player's playthrough, and it is such a fine line, and unfortunately the problem is one-sided. If someone drops below that average, you drop below that average line, it ain't such a big deal because you can just go back and farm up. If you're getting your ass kicked by handed to by boss, you can just go back and farm up a bit. It's not that big a deal. But someone who plays above the average leisurely playthrough, someone who does do the optional content, completionists, they're fucked. They're absolutely fucked. And I used 12 as an example in my last video. If you started doing hunts when they first appeared, or in 13.2, if you decided to complete the Historia Crux, you could end up straying from that casual path within the first 30 to 40% of the game in a very considerable way. And once you stray from that line, once you're over leveled, it's near on impossible to get back down to that line, because it's a snowball effect. You just keep leveling and leveling, and then you're stuck fighting bosses and mobs who are no longer providing you any kind of a fulfilling challenge for the rest of the game. And like I said, to me that's a problem. You add all this awesome optional content, but I can't play it, or I have to save it for a second run through, because otherwise I'll be pimping the rest of the game and treating the game's bosses like my bitches. I've heard FF15 has over 200 side quests. Great, bring it on. But if I do them, will I do a Chris Brown on Oriana and beat the living shit out of her? So it's an issue that even FF15 could be facing, as they have added so much optional content. But like I said, it's an issue that could get ridiculously out of hand in the FF7 remake in particular. If our gear, stats and character setups do transition across the games, it could get insane, because it's all well and good getting overpowered in one game and sort of separating from that line, that is a problem there. But imagine if you get overpowered in one game, imagine what it would happen across 3 full games, like the FF7 remake is shaping up to be. Now, I don't want to have to avoid doing optional content in Final Fantasy 15 or the 7 remake. I don't want to have to save it for a second run through. I want to. Now, I don't know if you guys feel the same on that, but I want to do the optional content in my first run through. I don't want to have to save it all and then do it afterwards, Now, I've wanted Final Fantasy 15 and the 7 remakes for literally 10 years each. Literally. I mean, when I say that, it kind of blows my mind. Literally 10 years each. That is most of my life. I am doing the optional content. I've not waited that long, and I'm going to wait to do the optional content. And I've not waited this long, and I'm not going to do every ounce of it. I'm going to complete both of those games. Whatever the average game time is, triple it, and that's me. I'm going for hard completions. So I've been giving it a lot of thought. How can Square Enix solve this age-old issue that has plagued the franchises and many franchises? How is the FF7 remake going to get around this? But I'm going to start with what I personally feel. I'm going to do it a bit of a roundabout way. I'm going to start with what I personally feel the remake cannot do, or what I hope they don't do. Let me know with a like if you agree with my points that are coming up, and hopefully Kitase will be derping around on YouTube, come across this video and be like, holy shit, this white dude has some baller ideas. Let's go! The first point is quite simply not carry over our gear, stats and character setups. And that would certainly tackle the balancing issue from getting further out of hand, suppress it from getting out of hand in the FF7 remake by simply resetting the game every episode. So pretty much essentially what 13 did with 13.2 and Lightning Returns. You started over, sort of started from scratch, back down to sort of level 1 with just your basic attack commands. But for me, this is a no-no. For me personally, this is a no-no. While that worked with the 13 trilogy, because essentially they were different games, there was a new story, a new direction. It went from being the second 13.2, it became Sarah and Noel's story, and we hadn't played them before. And they've even got different timelines. So it works with the 13 trilogy, but it won't work with the FF7 remake. Because, and this is the reason why, this is one massive story expanded, guys. I mean, they are expanding it, and it's a fully realised version of the original story in all its graphical glory across 3 huge games. Brilliant, fucking love it. So happy we're getting 3 full games. But at the end of the day, it's still one story nonetheless. I want the choices. So I want the choices we make in the first game, the equipment I collect, the characters I set up, the characters I level. I want that all to carry over. By the time the third Final Fantasy VII Remake game comes out, if it is 3, I'm kind of guessing it's 3. I want it to feel like one complete conjoined experience. I want switching the PS4 remake episodes to feel the same as if I was going over to my PlayStation 1 back in the day and switching the discs. And I want it to feel like one full experience. But if they reset our levels and everything we acquired in the previous games, it's gonna, in my opinion, break up the continuity of the games, where it will feel like 3 individual experiences as to one big fuck off amazing experience, and that in my eyes will diminish the remake, and that's the first point. The second is put the optional content at the end. One way they could solve this problem of getting over leveled on optional content, while it won't help with the transitioning, that will still be fucked. It would help during the game. Stick it on the end, so we have to complete the mainline story and do that optional content at just the end. But that is an even bigger no-no to me, an even bigger no-no than point number 1. One of the best things about Final Fantasy VII was the freedom to do what you wanted when you wanted, and sticking optional content on the end, or not even adding optional content at all, it takes away that very important feeling of freedom that FF7 the original had, and that I believe FF7 the remake needs to keep. And point number 3, and this kind of ties into that point as well, is the other option that they could take is have the optional content in there, and sort of mixed in with the mainline story, but rigidly control the optional content, control when it appears in the game, and set our paths to pretty much stumble over the optional content and sort of wave it in front of our noses to play it. And the reason that would kind of help the situation is because it would normalise the casual to completionist ratio a bit better. You know, people who would otherwise avoid optional content or sort of go out looking for it might be more inclined to do it. Do you know what I'm saying? So you'd get casual players who will just happily avoid optional content and not look for it. They'll start doing it a bit more, and it would kind of even the ratio a bit. But once again, and this is why it's on my no-no list, it would take away from the freedom. It would take away from the freedom, and not just the feeling of freedom, but the feeling of exploration, of stumbling upon hidden gems that the original had. I'm trying to think of an example here. Take the submarine. Take that sunken submarine at the bottom of the ocean that was full of insanely difficult bosses and mobs that would pretty much anal fist you the entire way as you try to get to Hades materia. Sure, they could throw that submarine, if it's in the remake, they could throw that submarine into our path in a lot more of a glaringly obvious way. But it would lose that feeling of discovery. You know, it would lose that feeling of finding that submarine sort of in the corner of the map, at the bottom of the seabed. It was because it was hidden away, it felt like a discovery. It felt like a hidden gem. And that's kind of why you get such a vast difference between people who just casual play the mainline and people who do optional content. The people who do the optional content, they go looking for it, they explore the world, they find things that are out the way, and they enjoy doing that, and I think that needs to stay. So that is a no-no. Point number 4 is to scale every boss and mob according to current gear and stats. So pretty much no matter how much you complete of the first game, no matter how powerful you get in the first game, no matter how much optional content you do in the first game, it doesn't matter if you play 200 hours more than the average player, it doesn't matter if you collect all the best gear and weapons, the enemy stats will always stay at X% above your stats. Now, I considered this for some time, I thought of ways they could make that work, and I came to the conclusion that they can't. They can't. And the reasons for it, and I'm going to be a bit anecdotal here, I love hard bosses. I love hard bosses, and when I say hard bosses, I mean in a way that makes me pretty much a self-harming sadist. I want bosses to kick my ass. I want them to punish me. I want them to dominatrix me. I like dying 100 times to bosses. I like struggling every inch of the way through dungeons to clear mobs. You know, and that's just me. Some of my fondest memories are the hardest ones, or the hardest bosses, like Jekt, for example. He made me suck my own dick for 4 days straight. X-Death. He spanned me right round, baby, right round for a good 12 hours before I beat him. And, you know, when I look back on those, or when I look back on some of the really, really old Final Fantasy days, you know, remember those times when you'd be balls deep in a dungeon, you're down to your last potion, you used your last Phoenix down 5 minutes ago, your characters are all out of mana, and you've still got 2 more bosses to fight ahead of you. How often does that happen anymore? Where you're so balls deep in a dungeon, not even the nuts are hanging out, and you're desperately looking at sort of random shit in your inventory like, how can this help me? I don't know about you guys, but I look back on those experiences fondly. You know, the rage, the instant wipes, the hours and hours of struggle, because to me personally, the feeling of reward after getting over those kind of obstacles is so much better. That's just me. That's just me. But I know not everyone is like that. In fact, I'd say probably most people aren't that extreme. Most people probably don't want to get fucked around by a boss for 12 hours, but I do. I really do love the challenge. So that's why that kind of scaling wouldn't work. It wouldn't solve the problem that we sort of all have varying degrees of skill. And what would be too easy to, say, X million of people would still be too easy, and to the other X million people it would still be too hard. And the game should cater to both. The game should cater to both. You should be able to go back and farm up and make the game easier for yourself. If you can't do it, if you really can't do the fights, you should have an opportunity to go back and make it easier for yourself and farm up a bit. But obviously, if they keep scaling the bosses above what your current level is, it doesn't matter how much you farm, the boss is going to stay X difficult, and that's not fair. Take my girlfriend for example. She's absolutely shocking at combat, dumb as a fucking dodo when it comes to combat. But she enjoys these kind of games for she doesn't play them for the combat. She plays them for the storyline, characters and music alone. That's what she likes. Should she not be afforded a way to play the game? No, and equally, it shouldn't cater solely to casual players. If someone wants to pull off some amazing feat of strength like killing Sephiroth at level 8, he should also be allowed to do that. So it shouldn't cater to casual players, just casual players, like it usually has done either. That's what this sort of issue is stemming from. But I'll get back more into that one later. Now, with the 4 points of what they can't do out of the way, or what I think they can't do, time for me to stop beating around the bush and let you guys in on my idea. And it's an idea that Square Enix could already well be doing if they could already be implementing everything I'm saying here. And if they aren't doing it, they need to. They need to. I know you're watching this, Kitase. I know you're watching this. So listen closely, mate. It came to me, the secret of balancing these games, and it lies in one of your games, Square Enix. This game, Final Fantasy XIV to be exact. Now, remember guys, this is just a concept, a base idea. Don't go on it at face value. There is a way to pretty and dress everything up so it fits seamlessly to every game. It's the principle that counts. Bear that in mind. But I was strolling along one day, Final Fantasy XIV, derping around at a low level, and then boom, I came across it. As I came across a Fate level sync. Now, I didn't think much of it at first. Synced my character and I went on, carried on derping around. But then the more I played of 14 and the more I saw the level sync in action, it then occurred to me that this could quite possibly have solved every issue I have ever had of struggling with becoming overpowered or doing optional doing optional content and sort of avoiding it. I've had to avoid doing optional content in the past, and this could have solved it. For anyone who doesn't know, level sync is a feature, as it sounds, as the name implies, in 14 that allows the player to actively synchronize themselves to the difficulty of the current enemy they are facing. It's as simple as that. Now, I know you might think that seems quite clunky and out of place. A bright yellow sync button or any kind of button that you press to sort of brashly synchronize your level. And I would agree with you there. That wouldn't fit in too nicely. But like I said, you can dress everything up and it's just the principal concept that counts. A way that I could envision this being used, or sort of nicely disguised, in a way that we don't even notice it, but that the principle works, is by doing what Type 0 did. I think Type 0 is an amazing game, but what was most amazing about it, and the reason it's the only game that I have done 2 playthroughs back to back for over 300 hours of gameplay, was the difficulty settings. The difficulty settings. Type 0 offered real difficulty settings. It seems so old and classic, But allowing players to choose their difficulty will always be the best way you can deal with this issue. Let the player choose and then disguise a level sync in there. Combine them. Combine the old classic, selecting how hard you want this, and then disguise a level sync in there. But do it like Type 0 did it. With Type 0 you had difficulty boundaries. I think it was beginner, normal, intermediate, finis, and there was also a Lassie mode, a secret hidden Lassie mode you can unlock. And let me just say, finis was insane. It was no joke. It was no joke. In fact, the jump between every difficulty was very, very profound and noticeable. Yeah, hard was actually very hard, and that's how it should be. Don't just add 2 half-assed options of normal and intermediate like you did for 13, and what many games do now, and what you've done for many other games. Where the difference between the two, you only have you have normal and intermediate. Don't want to add easy because no one wants to play easy, and you don't want to have to tell someone they're playing easy. You've got to call it normal now. And there's barely any fucking difference between the two. And what is the point of that? What is the point of that? That doesn't challenge those. I played Final Fantasy 13 on intermediate and I still found it easy. No, if I'm picking the hardest option on a game, I should be getting wrecked. I should be dying quite a bit, but that wasn't happening, and that's because these boundaries are too weak, and that's a problem because it doesn't challenge those who want to be seriously challenged. Just like the normal mode, it doesn't help my girlfriend, who is a total retard when it comes to battle. Make the difficulty boundaries more noticeable and add more of them. Once you do that, once you combine that with a hidden level sync feature, either discreetly placed at the start of the game or say at quarterly chapter points through the game, so about 4 points, that will solve the issue clear the issue right up of players disconnecting from that casual line. And it answers the question also of how can you make our stats, gear, character levels, character setups transition between remake episodes. Because if I get level 99, say, I don't know if it's going to go up to level 99 on the first remake episode, but if it does, you best believe I'm going to get 99. You best believe. Put your money on it. And let's say I then choose to play level episode 2, so I got to level 99 in the first episode. Let's say in episode 2, when it comes out, I choose to play hard for that game. Level up everything like Type 0 would do it. So essentially every mob and boss in that game, their stats would then shift up to discreetly, obviously shift them up discreetly, hidden, to around the 110 to 120 mark. If I choose normal, then they'll start at 99 like me, and if I choose finished or the hardest difficulty, they'll be level 130 with berserk mode. But do it that way. Don't do it the way 14 does it and squash us down to fit the enemy's level. Now, FF7 remake is not an MMO, it doesn't need to do it that way. Do the opposite. Scale the enemies up. Now, scale the enemies up. That way we keep our feeling of being uber strong between each episode. There's not this feeling of being sort of dragged down levels where our stats get crushed down and the difficulty gets pulled down. Bring everything up. That way we stay just as strong, our gear stays the same, our stats don't get crushed, our numbers don't get crushed, and it could even be an awesome quirk to the game. It could even be an awesome quirk because, now imagine it, someone who hardcores all 3 of the games in the Final Fantasy remake, they 100% complete all of it and they do all of it on max difficulty. They could end up at the end of the Final Fantasy VII remake fighting a Sephiroth with 10 million HP, whereas the casual line might have only set it at 500k HP. There you go! You've now got an epic YouTube video of a 10 million safer Sephiroth being killed, and maybe give that guy an achievement for doing that. Maybe even because he's 10 million safer Sephiroth, maybe even add in a few extra boss mechanics. that 500k casual Safer Sephiroth wouldn't have. Or maybe a special weapon or something for killing him. But you have to give people something to make them want to do that, to make them want to go on those really difficult modes. Something that the casual players won't get. And this brings me back to the catering to the casuals point. The only reason someone is going to intentionally make something much harder for themselves, or grind endlessly for countless hours, or practice their skills, not just for the challenge side of it, but it's also if they're going to get something, an achievement or gear or anything small that other people aren't going to get. That it's not about being elitist, guys. It's not about being elitist. I can already hear people saying those comments at me already. It's not about being elitist or punishing players who aren't skilled enough at grasping the combat systems. It's just how it should be. It's how people want it to be. It's about having something to aspire to, even though you may personally never do it. Not everyone should be able to play the game at hard mode. If you're going to add a hard mode onto a game, it should actually be hard. AKA, not everyone has the skill to do it. Don't tell me I'm playing it on hard mode and then I go in there and I can fucking tell that 99.9% of people can do it at this difficulty. Fuck that. Call it hard, make it hard. Same with bosses. Not everyone should be able to kill Emerald Weapon or Ruby Weapon. And that should be in the same for the remake. You should have to work for those victories, and you should have the skill to do it. And I mean, it's this catering to casuals bullshit that has killed World of Warcraft. Take World of Warcraft. Catering to casuals has fucking killed that game. Adding that absolutely ridiculous looking for raid function. Why the fuck they ever added that? It's beyond me. Added a looking for raid function so that even the biggest noob player with fuck all gear who plays only an hour a week, between looking after his 25 kids, that bloke could step into the same dungeon as me, kill Deathwing or the Lich King at the exact same fucking time as me. No, Blizzard, no, you fucked up there. And that is why your game is now shit and no one is playing it. The reason what people loved about WoW was the aspiring to kill that boss. And yes, only maybe 2% or 5% of people only ever killed those end game bosses. Yeah, but it was the aspiring to do it. And when you took that out there, people weren't fucking interested anymore. Now, if you want any more sort of proof of, people who are willing to go that extra mile and put in the extra effort should get things that other people who don't. They should get rewarded with things that other people don't get. And just look at RuneScape if you want proof of that. The only reason any fucker plays that game is, the only reason someone's going to sit there for 200 plus hours by a fucking riverside fishing to get some poxy cape. Why do they want that cape? Because barely anyone has it. That's the only reason. That's why people want it. Because other people don't have it. The power of wanting something that not many have and the prestige of it is very powerful. And WoW lost sight of that. WoW lost sight of it. Now, I sound like I'm ranting at Final Fantasy here. I realise that. I'm going to say Final Fantasy has always done a good job at rewarding players who want to take that next step further. Like Penance, for example. He was fucking ridiculous. Not even I can do that guy. They did add in those things. But you need to make sure more than ever that you keep it up with the FF7 remakes, because the balancing issue across the 3 games, if you keep it how it's always been on that casual line, like I said, it's gonna get ridiculous, and you need to solve it. And this is how you do it. Add in your difficulty modes. Not only those difficulty modes will not only solve the issue, but also add more replay value. You might play it on intermediate the first time, and then you might go nuts on the second guy and go finesse. Yeah, add that in and add a secret level sync that'll bring us transition across us across all 3 games, 3 episodes, but keep our power, keep our stats, keep our gear, nothing gets crushed down. That's how you solve it. This, and one other thing, just one other thing, the last aspect to my idea, vision, suggestion, lunacy, whatever you want to call it. There is still one more issue the remake needs to resolve if they are going to carry over stats, and once again it's an issue that could be greatly inflated by the fact that FF7 is going to be 3 full games now. Remember from my last video when I spoke about the characters you select, how one person could choose to play exclusively with 3 champs, and whereas another person could choose to level up all of them, all 6 of them, or might sort of switch them in and out and play them a bit more intermittently and evenly, and how even in that one game that can cause a balancing issue, where 3 characters get powered up very quickly at almost twice the pace and the others don't. Now the reason this issue could get inflated by the remake is because if we do carry across our stats, it's the issue that if they do the remake how the original was, with the old 3 character teams, you just sort of had 3 characters, not only are you going to smash the first episode with your dedicated team, you will then be trapped like that for 2 more games. Let's say you decide to play Tifa, Cloud and Nanaki in the first episode. You like their character models and you just take a liking to them straight away. They make Nanaki look absolutely pimpin' beast, and they give Tifa some big jubbly wobblies, which they had better give Tifa some big jubbly wobblies. If they don't, I'm gonna be fucking heartbroken. And you neglect other champs. I'm sure we all had it in Final Fantasy VII. We all had, I don't know, Kate Sith might have only been level 10, and Sid might have only been level 12, and Yuffie might have only been level 15, and then we had our 3 characters who were level 60, our 3 main characters that we decided to play with. Now the issue is, if you've got 3 games and it carries over our stats, you're going to be stuck that way for 3 full games. You're gonna, you've gone from being stuck that way for 40 hours to being stuck that way for 120 hours. Because now you're playing no one but Tifa, Cloud and Nanaki exclusively for 3 games straight. Because you're not going to go back. No, people don't go back. Most people don't go back and level up your characters who you left, who fell off the bandwagon back on episode 1. If you had a character fall off back on episode 1 and they're still level 10, you're not going to go back and level that person. Yeah, so you're going to be stuck with the original team you picked for 3 full games, and that could get very stale very quickly. And people, I can just see them now getting pissed off that they can't play other characters, or they're getting bored of just the 3 they've decided to pick. So what's the solution for that? Well, let me tell you, it comes in the form of 2 other games in the franchise. Well, not 2 other games. Well, Final Fantasy X and once again Type 0. I'm probably sounding like a Type 0 fanboy right now, but trust me, it's got some good concepts. For me, what the FF7 remake absolutely has to have is, now that it is a single character controlled action game, we're only going to be sort of controlling one character. We've seen that in the trailer. It's that they add out the switch out function that Type 0 had. Oh god, the switch out function that Type 0 had was dope. Give us a supercharged version of that, where you can instantly switch in characters at any moment. Any of them. Oh no, give us all of the FF7 characters and we could just switch them in an instant at the drop of a hat. God, imagine it, guys. Imagine it. Just imagine you're pulling some kick-ass moves off on Tifa, and then you instantly switch in Yuffie, and you go into your ninja shuriken mode, and then straight to Nanaki, and you maul up some bitches. You could even do it so you could Q attacks. You could be on Tifa, lay up her attacks, then switch into fucking, I don't know, Sid, and then lay down a special team attack. Special team attacks! Oh man, that would be the knucking farts. And while it'd be dope, it would also tackle the balancing issue. It would tackle the balancing issue, especially if you combine it with what FF10 had. And what FF10 had is where every character that you played with, even if you got a single poke in, let's say Kamari came in for 2 seconds, as long as he got a nice old juicy poke in with that stab, you know, even if he sodded off again and weren't there at the end of the fight, he'd get an equal share of the XP. That would fix it. That would fix this character falling off issue of 3 characters being super grinded and the others all falling off the bandwagon, never getting played again. If you allow us to freely change characters like we could in Type 0, to quick switch them like we could in Type 0, and you add that XP distribution, you have a much better chance of having people experimenting and playing every single character and bringing them up evenly. You know, if you look at 10 and you look at Type 0, it was the same for me. I had a set team in Type 0, and I'm not saying you can't have a set team in 7 Remake, because I had a set team in Type 0 and I had a set team in Final Fantasy X, but unlike other FFs, I also had other characters who were fairly decently leveled, because they had those switch out functions, because they were so easy to switch in and out. And that's important, because someone who wants to try to play characters in episode 1 will also want to try them out in episode 2, but if they fall off and if they're 50 levels behind, they're not going to do that. But they're going to be more inclined to play characters in episode 1 or not go down that dedicated team route if you allow us to switch in and out quickly. It's only when you make switching characters an issue and a weary ball ache and an absolute bastard to do, because you need to spend ages sort of out of combat menus doing it. Say you want to switch over your character in Final Fantasy VII, you had to I want materia in Final Fantasy VII Remake, but yeah, if you wanted to switch, you'd have to unjunction all of your bloody materia. Then you'd have to take off all the bangles and the gear, all the good ones, and then you'd have to call your fucking PHS, and then you'd switch the character, and then you'd have to reconfigure, and it was an effort to switch characters. And that's why people became inclined to just stick to their character 3, their 3 main characters that they enjoyed, because it was an effort to change it. But give people a way to play all of the characters fluidly, and they will do it. They will do it. Even Kate Sith will get played. Hell yeah! Even I'll jump in. If I can quick switch characters, even I'll jump Kate Sith in and throw the little cheeky cunt's dice about. You best believe it, and that's how you deal with it, Square. Make it happen. So there you have it. Those are my ideas. Those are my thoughts. That's my 2 cents on the matter. And for all I know, like I said, Square could already be doing this. Something close or something better, I don't know. But this is the way I envision it happening, in a way that does not get ridiculous, because I can see a problem looming up ahead. I can see it coming. I can see the iceberg, and the Titanic ain't steering in time. If the remake games are going to carry over our stats leveling gears and our levels from the first game, it might not. It might not, and this might all be rhetoric. We might have to restart every game, which, like I said, I'm hoping it's not the case. I personally feel quite disappointed with that. But if it does happen and you're also disappointed with it, like this video, share it so Kitase-san and Nomura-san, they can see it. Which I'm sure they already are. I know you're there, guys. I know you're watching this video. But just in the rare case that Nomura or Kitase aren't watching my video, give it a like if in any way, shape or form you agree with the premise of what I've laid out. If you share any of the similar wants or desires for the remake as I do. Do you even mind? Do you even give a shit anymore? Do you even give a shit if we start afresh each episode? Does that not bother you? Let me know. Until the next video, peasants. Kupo.